Look at that view. It's gorgeous out here. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna sit in my van because it's super windy out here. And you're not gonna be able to hear me. Most important message is that it's time to stop messing around. If you know you have spiritual senses, because we all do, you're experiencing things you can't experience. You don't know. You're experiencing things you can't understand. You're experiencing things that you are unsure of how to explain, then this is the perfect video for you, because at this point, I think we can all say that we do. So what's the point of understanding what our spiritual senses are? What are spiritual senses? What's our dominant sense? Why does it matter? What's the whole point? First things first is a spiritual sense is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically paired to our physical senses, but it's a spiritual sense. It's the things that a lot of psychic mediums say they have, And does it mean you're psychic? In a way, yes. I'm just not a big fan of that word. The most important thing is that you have abilities that you have not been using because you've been conditioned not to use them by the construct, by society, by the system, by the matrix. So that being said, what are the senses that you have? What's the dominant sense? The dominant divine sense is based on your energy. It's based on your chakras. It's based on the point in your body that you are blocked. It's based on your theme of consciousness. It's based on who you are today. What version of yourself exists? That's the sense that you're going to experience the most. The one you need to. The sense that's going to help you grow. So a perfect example as to what these senses are and what might be your dominant sense is hearing something that you don't know is around you, whether it be your ears ringing, a frequency, it could be a voice, whether it be your voice or a loved one's voice, anything that you might be audibly hearing. That is a perfect example of a sense. Another one is visually seeing something. So seeing things in your mind's eye, it's very similar to daydreaming. When you could be looking directly at someone and not actually seeing them because you're completely out of it, like you're daydreaming. So they could be saying hi and you're not even seeing them because you're seeing something else. You're experiencing something else. So just a side note, me personally, I was very visual for a long time because at that point in my life, I needed to be visual because I needed to see it to believe it. Right. So as someone was speaking to me, as people would be speaking to me, I would actually be seeing the events playing out in my mind's eye. So I'd be seeing what they're wearing, how they sound, the people in the event, the characters playing in that, particular story they're telling me. And I would never question it until one day I did. And I got the confirmation I needed because everything that I told the person that was speaking to me actually happened in the way that I saw it. And I wasn't even there. So another really popular or common spiritual sense would be feeling. And this is paired with empathic abilities. So this is when you can feel that something's going on with someone, whether it be positive or negative, but you can feel them. Whether it be someone either, it doesn't matter. But it's being able to intake emotion from the outside of us. And, hopefully you're not becoming it, but you experiencing it. That's the most important thing. So these are the top 3 most common spiritual senses that we experience. And the whole reason why it's important for us to figure out, I wouldn't say figure out, but to become aware of which one is our dominant is because once you have that awareness, then you also have the ability to accept it. These abilities, accept that this is who you are. This is who you've always been. The human being that has more than our physical senses. You have spiritual senses. So now when I said that it depends on your energy flows through our body, up and down, up through our head, down through our bottoms, right? So if we have a block in that energy, that block is there for a reason. It's there because there's something in our life that we are not willing to admit to ourselves. There's something in our life that we're not willing to accept. That inability to accept that thing in our life determines what sense is being experienced. And it's really cool if you think about it that way, because it's like, oh, well, okay. And I guess I can give you an example. Let's give you a personal example really quick here. I was not able to accept that I was worthy of being a psychic, worthy of having these abilities. So I needed to see it to believe it again and be a very visual person. I needed to be able to have the solid confirmation that I'm experiencing things that I probably shouldn't be experiencing. And I was I was seeing things. I was very visual. And the reason why I'm avoiding using the terms clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyance, I don't want to use them because they're not important. They're not. You don't need to use those names because all the senses are the same for the most part. It's just a part of us that's been laying dormant that we haven't used because we've been indoctrinated not to use them. That's the most important thing. So now, the reason why it's important for us to learn what these are and how to integrate them into our lives again, and how to be aware of how we've been integrating them into our lives, is because this is a part of us that's always existed. Can you imagine being born and then a doctor telling you that you're blind, you can't see, and then you believing them? Literally, just without questioning, you're just like, okay, I'm blind. I can see, but I guess I'm blind because they said so. Like, can you imagine that? It's insane. So this is an opportunity for us to live better lives, to grow on a collective level, because as you grow, we all grow, right? And to just be to have a better human experience. That's the whole reason why we're here, is to experience that growth, on a larger scale. It's also, and this is super dramatic to say, but I don't care. But on a larger scale, we're not just here to experience growth on an individual level and even on the collective level. We are here to fight the energies that are trying to keep us from doing so. This is a war in spirit. It's always been going on since the dawn of time, and different planets and different species. It's the same war, fighting good against evil. But really, it's because we're fighting so much, we don't realize that we need to find a balance in between it. We need to find a balance. That's the human experience. Realizing that the more you grow in this experience, the more you're going to grow in other ones in the future where you're not on Earth. And I want to remind you, you did choose to be here. No one forced you to be here. You chose this planet for a reason. So you can kind of play around with it a little bit and say, okay, well, where was I before? What planet was I on? That dream that I had where I was like a whole other extraterrestrial person and all these other things. Like, play around with it and have fun, and stop taking life so seriously. Stop taking things so personally, because the people that you're in conflict with right now are different versions of yourself that you once were, and maybe you are still that version. You're still that on that vibration. And the only reason why they're doing and saying things that you might not do and say is because their experiences are different. So of course you're not going to choose to do that, or you're not going to choose to do what they're doing. You don't have the same experiences, but they are a version of you. You are them. So the reason why understanding what spiritual senses are and how to use them and how to integrate them into our lives and how to just have a human the next question would be, okay, how do we do this? How do we start integrating these senses and start understanding what they are, becoming more aware, accepting them? The first step is creating micro habits. Question everything that you experience in your life. Question everything. Everything that you choose, whether it be a book, a movie, a choice to speak to a complete stranger, it happens for a reason. There is something in that you need to learn. There is something in that is a synchronicity. You're seeing repeating numbers. You're hearing different conversations from people that are unrelated to each other, but speaking about the same thing. You're experiencing that for a reason. So it's awareness and then accepting, right? The next step would be, I would say, asking questions about your personal life. Why you experience the things that you experience, but more importantly, why did you choose to look at it in the way that you did? And this is an observation. This isn't do it here. So instead of getting stuck in judging the thoughts that are coming through your mind, instead of feeling bad for the things that have happened to you, what you want to do is be an observer. Look from the outside, looking into your experiences. And then also allowing those experiences and allowing those thoughts that are running through your mind. And this is a great, great, great tip for meditation, by the way. Allowing those thoughts that come through to tell you exactly what you need to work on. So as you're meditating, as you're doing this work, as you say, as you're being present, like I told you to, the most important thing is not judge those thoughts. Those thoughts are coming up for a reason. That relationship that you are no longer in is coming up for a reason. That person that hurt you is coming up for a reason. All these different things, I'm telling you right now, that is where you start on your healing journey. You start where it's the most uncomfortable. You start where it's the most uncomfortable. You get support. You see a professional therapist if you need to. You find a spiritual mentor. I do classes. I'm also on TikTok Live, less than I used to, but I'm still on there. I'm ramping back up for it, or to it. So the most important thing is realizing that you have support on this journey. And I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of what it looks like, what you can expect when you are fully integrated with your spiritual senses, when you are fully aware and you're feeling confident that you can actually use them. This is what your day-to-day would look like. You'd wake up in the morning and you would say to yourself, I get to do X, Y, and Z. You feel confident in yourself. You're fully aware of how much the world actually loves you. When people say something to you that's negative, you don't even bat an eye because you know that it's not personal. It's about their reflection of themselves. And then moving on, let's say you're at work and you're so happy at work now because you realize that you're there for a reason. And you know that when you're ready to leave, you can do that when you want. So there's no stress. There's no feeling of lack. There's none of that. You look at your bank account, it doesn't matter what the number says in that account, you're happy because you know that the things you need will come to you. This is what life would be like when you are finally realizing that you are not healed, but you are on a healing journey and it never ends. But what happens is it becomes easier for you to do so. It becomes easier for you to make decisions and live a life that you want to live. On top of that, the senses that you use allows you to have better relationships with people and better relationship with yourself. That's what you should expect when you begin this journey, when you start realizing that you have already began this journey. I want to share a story with you. When I first finally realized that I had spiritual senses. I didn't even know what it was called at the time. All I knew is what I experienced. I worked for 4 months at a homeless shelter in Florida, and I made a lot of really great connections there, but there was this one really short Italian guy that I met, and he was just super sweet, from Brooklyn, had this really thick New York accent, and he was telling me that he applied to an apartment nearby, and he was afraid he wasn't going to get the apartment. As he's speaking, something told me, Tanisha, since when people speak to you, you're constantly seeing images playing behind your eyes, why don't you just ask him if what you're seeing is true? Can you confirm with him what you're seeing is true? So I said, okay. I interrupted him and I said, can I tell you what I'm seeing right now, as he was speaking to me? And he said, sure. And I said, I basically explained the whole apartment, how it looked from the inside, how it looked on the outside. I explained what he was doing in the apartment, which he was sitting on his bed and he was eating lunch. And as I'm speaking, his eyes were getting wider and wider. And that's how I knew I was on the money. I was just like, oh, okay, so this is real. And he goes, how did you know that? That's exactly what the place looked like. And I guess that means I get the apartment. I guess that means my application is approved. And I said, I guess so. So after that, the conversation got kind of awkward. And then we separated ways because I think for him, he felt probably like, I don't know what he felt, but he probably was a little weirded out. I'm not going to lie. And then I was weirded out because I was like, how can I see all the things that he experienced? And I wasn't there with him. So after that, about a week later, I found out that he did, in fact, get the apartment. He got it. It was approved. And that was one of the biggest beginnings of my journey, but it wasn't the full beginning. Another perfect example is someone very close to me was being hurt when they were younger. And I knew something was wrong. Intuitively, I knew something was wrong with them. And I had the answer, but I didn't have the confirmation because the person didn't feel comfortable talking to me about it. And I kept hearing this voice tell me, check on this other person that's related to that person that's being hurt because they're the ones doing it. And I was like, well, no, because I just don't see that. I don't accept that. And this is, mind you, I'm like in my early 20s, so I'm not really into the spiritual realm, not fully at least. I don't know much about psychic abilities or spiritual senses or anything like that. So of course I brush it off and I just go hang out with my friends. And I find out years later that I was in fact getting a very clear message that something dark was happening with that particular person that I'm very close with. And, I might have been able to help them had I listened to the message. So do I blame myself? Absolutely not. But from now on, when I hear that voice, I no longer ignore it. And I also, this is important, when I say not ignore it, it doesn't mean that I listen to it. It just means that I acknowledge it. So, and then I make a choice. Also make sure that when I make that choice, I don't judge myself for it. I don't judge myself for, for not following or listening to the voice that, the audible voice that comes in. So, which is another spiritual sense. So these are just two personal examples for me, but I'm sure you guys have so many, so many times you've experienced something and you just couldn't explain it, but it came in through seeing, hearing, feeling, knowing, et cetera, et cetera. And there's so many other senses. So if you want to talk more, if you want to learn more, please subscribe if you aren't already. Join my classes online on Skool. The link is in my description and also in the channel description. And you can also meet with me one-on-one if you don't feel comfortable doing that. So I love you all. Thank you for existing. Peace.